That's me. And you may be wondering, why am I standing on top of some remote mountain with no beard performing what looks like some kind of Lord of the Flies ritual? Well, to explain, we're gonna have to go back, and I mean way back, to the date when this was created in April 2018. You see, back in middle school, my brother and a bunch of his friends had to do a reenactment of a Bible story for a class. It went so well that they made it a tradition, and about once every year they would find a random field, run around in bathrobes, and try to tell some familiar stories. But out of all of them, one stuck out above the rest, and that one was David and Goliath. Exactly why it was so special is kind of hard to explain. I mean, maybe it was moments like these.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow.
Yes, we had real sheep. But one part always kind of bothered me. You see, our Goliath didn't exactly fit the height requirement. So to fix that, we got an old step stool, put it on the ground, and called it good enough. But I always wondered, just how tall was Goliath? So I checked my Bible, flipped through 1 Samuel for a bit until I stumbled upon chapter 17, David and Goliath. I started reading and eventually found it in verse 4. A champion named Goliath who was from Gath came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. 6 cubits and a span? I mean, that's believed to be 9 feet and 9 inches. And you may be wondering how I knew that. Well, I'm American, so as long as it's not the metric system, I can work with it. But something in me wanted to fact check this 3-year-old video. So the first step was texting our Goliath and asking, how tall are you? He said, I'm about 6 foot. So I then went out to my garage, found the stool that we used in the filming, measured it, and it was about 13 inches tall. That put together is 7'1", which would be pretty tall if it was one person, but it's a little shy of 9'9". So I set out on a quest to see how tall Goliath really was, a quest that led to me constructing a real-life model of Goliath. But more on that later. First, I just want to know how I would look if I was to stand next to him. And this, with a little help of a ladder and some Photoshop, wasn't too hard to pull off. Alright, so I got my measuring tape, got my ladder. This ladder is 70 inches. Which is just a little off of 6 feet tall, so we're gonna have to add about 3 feet to this. This is only for scale. I'm then gonna Photoshop myself and then scale it up to 9'9", and then see how tall would I look next to an actual Goliath. So let's find out. I had a plan. I knew as soon as I set down the camera, I couldn't touch it because that would throw off the positioning and the scale. So I went out, measured how tall 9 feet 9 was, then using that photo for scale, I cut out a picture of me, made it to fit the height, then I cut it out again. But this time I left some space around it so I could accurately put it into photos while keeping the same size. And the results were crazy. So in case you are wondering, that's how tall I look next to Goliath. So yes, now we could see how tall the giant was, but this only had me questioning way more about the story. David beat this guy with a sling, some rocks, and the power of God. His words, by the way. He slung the stone super hard and super fast, striking Goliath in the forehead hard enough for him to die. Oh, and by the way, as always, our reenactment 3 years ago was spot on. But I couldn't stop wondering, if I was David, could I have hit the mark? Could I have been the savior of Israel? And I wanted to find out. So I decided to put my 0 skills in arts and crafts to use and slung together a behemoth that could replicate the 9'9" giant, along with his huge forehead. And to share the fun, I decided to bring out some friends so that we could all take our shot at it with the modern slingshot, aka our stash of Nerf guns. All right, so I'm here on set. People are gonna start arriving in about a half hour, so guess the only thing left to do is to cue that montage music. All right, so the goal, I'm gonna give everyone a Nerf gun. You're gonna stand a certain distance away. Super simple. If you can hit the target on 9'9" Goliath, actually, can I be honest? Goliath in the Bible is 9'9", this thing's 9'11". And if you're able to hit the target, Pastor Dave is gonna buy you a milkshake at Chick-fil-A. So who wants to go first? Going to be getting a milkshake today. No. And then, of course, I had to give it a shot. But I was nowhere close, so I decided to take Goliath down my own way.
Just full send.
Alright, so today we learned that if I was David, yeah, we'd have no shot. So after seeing how tall Goliath really was and then building a makeshift model of him, what did I learn? Well, I learned that David has some serious guts on him. However, when looking at his story, it's pretty easy to see why. You see, David grew up as a shepherd where he would watch over his father's sheep. Most of the time, he would just sit around and make songs and pray. But sometimes, wild animals would come and attack the sheep.
Back away! Back away!
And these years of growing were fundamental in the development of the David that we know in the Bible. Because as he grew, he would grow closer to the Lord, and also occasionally work on some of his fighting skills.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But the thing is, no amount of confidence, at least if you have some sanity, would allow you to go up against that kind of a giant. And we know that David did have sanity. So what made him so special? What allowed him to be so fearless to face that giant head on? Faith. You've heard it said, faith over fear, and this is a literal representation of that. You see, David had a lot of faith in God, enough to know that God would protect him against the wild animals and against this giant Goliath. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, something that Jesus said about faith really stuck out to me when I was doing research for this video. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. A mustard seed, in case you haven't seen one, is about this big. And if you have faith that size, when you're faced with a mountain, you can just tell it to move. You see, what God is saying here, that if we approach something with our own strength, those battles will seem impossible. But when we have faith, those battles that we approach with God by our side, He will fight for us. And when that's the case, there's no way that we could lose. So next time you have a giant in front of you or a mountain blocking your way, pray for a faith like David, and nothing will be able to stand against you.